Puerto Rico has a proven history of demonstrating resilience and strength while facing countless obstacles throughout the years. At the Puerto Rico Icon Institute, we envision a renewed Puerto Rico in the near future, a booming island full of business and investment opportunities. That is why we are joining hands with important decision makers, industry leaders, and emerging entrepreneurs to discover real attainable solutions to modern-day problems that currently affect our island, such as food security, the energy crisis, and our brain drain. We invite you to join us in our mission to ignite transformation in Puerto Rico's socio-economic development by empowering individuals and organizations through our think tank platform, which allows for collaboration among the greatest minds and the innovation of new ideas. United together, we can bring sustainable change to a new Puerto Rico.
It was 2006, and a guy from Israel, 9.3 million people living there, decided to create a technology to be able to map the whole country. That was Yuri Divine. He created Waze. A few years later, he sold the company for $1.3 billion to Google. At the same time, in a place with 10 million people, Sweden, a kid named Daniel Elk created Spotify. Someone close to here, named Benito, Bad Bunny, he was using in 2006 a platform called SoundCloud. Today, he sold $326 million in tickets only for 2022. Great ideas, innovation, creativity, and transformation do not belong to territories that have huge areas, huge pieces of land. They belong to the creativity, the potential, the intellectual, and emotional IQ of people who choose to dream. We are in the best moment in time for anyone in Puerto Rico to dream big about solutions that need to take place. Let's find problems. Let's solve problems. I'm so happy to see friends here that we've been doing this type of events and inspiration for younger people. Happy to see Carlos. I'm happy to see many of you who started dreaming many years ago. The guys from Gustazo, I remember the first time you opened, and today there are others right here, and we have the mentorship. Many of you have the opportunity to teach others that can create solutions to big problems. So I want to welcome you to Icon PR. The spirit of this organization is to ignite the power of possibilities in the mind of anyone who chooses to dream and who chooses to find a solution to big problems. So let's start with someone that has lived his whole life communicating exactly what this organization believes. His name is Dana Montenegro, and because I'm a 52-year-old guy, I need my other eyes. Hold a second. Dana is a design strategist, innovation consultant, and creative problem-solving facilitator who use design thinking and business rigor to reimagine social, civic, and business challenges. As the co-founder of Seriously Creative, he has crafted unique experiences for companies such as Red Bull, Adidas, and Abbott. Today, he is the head of design and the emerging tech consultancy company, Wovenware. Please help me welcome Dana Montenegro.
So, buenas tardes. Necesita eso. Okay. We'll do this, but I'll probably get rid of it at some point. ¿Cuántos de ustedes me conocen? How many of you know me already, right? Okay, we're going to do this quick, right? So, welcome to Creative Tensions. I know you have 6 things where you're going to learn a crap load of stuff in a little while, but we wanted to start off a little bit different. Those of you who know me know this is going to be a roller coaster ride, right? So it's not going to be a talk. So we're going to do creative tensions, and the way we describe it, it's a moving conversation and what it means to be human and what it means to be an entrepreneur, right? With that, this is me, Red Bull, Seriously Creative, Your Design, now Wovenware. You probably heard Wovenware. We just sold to Maxar, right? But I'm a design strategist. I'm a service designer. And what does all that mean? I like the people side of business and what it means to create experiences, right? Let's have this moving conversation. Let me just tell you right now, you're gonna have to, in a moment, I'm gonna give you prompts, polarities, tensions, that you're gonna have to think on which side of that polarity do you belong. I'm gonna ask you, don't overthink it, right? You're gonna move around the room, and I'm gonna tell you if you move far away from the middle of the room, it's because you truly, deeply believe in this side of the argument versus that side of the argument. We'll have a few people share their thoughts. If you change your mind, you're gonna move, and there's no standing in the middle. I know none of that makes sense, right? But I'm gonna show you how it works. And the first thing you need to do is stand up. Stand up. You see where you were sitting? You're gonna be nowhere near that in a moment, right? So, very quickly, this is the middle of the room. Imagine there's a big line down the middle of the room right now. See? Pasteles. With ketchup or sin ketchup? I know for some of you it doesn't totally make sense. Just go with it. But like so if you believe that pasteles should be sin ketchup, you go to this side of the room. But if sin ketchup, con ketchup, right? Now, if you are violently opposed to ketchup on pasteles, pues mira, hey, el HDMI se desconectó, right? Este es el sin ketchup, ¿sí? ¿Sí? Que tú estás violently opposed to sin ketchup, posiblemente you're standing at the door, right? If you're kind of like, well, if you drop a little bit on my pastel, I'll be okay, you're probably more here. If you're like violently, yes, without ketchup, I don't even want it, you're gonna be way over there. You just can't be right in the middle, which is where the camera is. You just can't be in the middle. Okay, so tell me, the people on this side of the room, when you look at the people over there, you're like, all right? Okay, so this is how this game works. I'm gonna give you prompts, and depending on how you feel about it, you will go on one side of the room or the other, and how intensely you feel about it will determine how far you go. If you're not so intense about it, you're going to be somewhere around here. If you are intense, you're going to be way off to the side. Everyone understand the game? You will only have a moment to get where you want to get. So como buen puertorriqueños, right? Like when we all get in the kitchen and that's where everyone drinks, and even though there's like a big marquesina to be standing in, it's going to get crowded. It's okay. Pues, we are trying to reconnect the machine, right? Okay, we're gonna do this just through what I'm gonna tell you, right? So, a great leader is good because they inspire and have vision or are disciplined and clear. Okay, you have 5 more seconds. Okay, stop wherever you are. I'm going to ask a few people to tell me why they went where they went. And when you hear them, if they've influenced you to reconsider how extreme you are, or even what side of the line you're on, the moment you feel that, go ahead and move wherever you think you should be moving. You don't have to be invited. So, por acá, dime, ¿por qué discipline? Sí, funciona así. Necesita hablar y hablar alto. Why do you say disciplined and clear? But without discipline, you're never going to make it anywhere, is what she's saying, right? Yeah? So who over there? Flowered shirts, white shorts, right there. That's you, yeah. That's you, right? Why do you say vision and inspiration? Okay, so refute these idiots. Come on, someone tell me, over there. Team, sir. And speak loud.
Trial and error, we have to have a fine line and set a goal. And we have to make mistakes along the way, but always with that goal in mind. Be very, very straight towards that line.
Okay, perfect, right? Okay, so you understand this first. We're going to do another one now, right? So, we achieve great things when we invest time in ourselves on that side, or put attention on others on this side. We achieve great things when we invest time in ourselves or put attention on others. Go where you want to go. You have to decide what that means to you. So go where you believe you should be. Move around the room. You have like 10 seconds to do it. Oh, look, there's some people who are going from over there to way over here, but this is still like the popular crowded room, right? These are the people who got the good grades. Right? Okay, so who over here? Why is it putting attention on others? Anyone on this side of the room. Putting attention on others. Back there.
I think if you want to build something, you need to listen to the people around you in the community. When you live in an environment and you don't take care of it, you don't have a place to live. So I put attention to others to understand what their needs are and what to build and what to provide. That's why I'm way over here.
Okay, so that's an interesting argument. Who over here wants to help us understand investing time in ourselves is how we achieve great things? See, Akeem. Right? The pilot first, right? Like when the mask comes down, putting on yourself before your kids, right? That's your philosophy, right? Okay, that's interesting. Anyone else over here want to expand on that? Why is it in ourselves? Sir.
Able
You are the machine of the change, so it has to be you first, right? Okay, perfect. Who over here wants to help us this? Sir, right there.
I'd like the audience here to raise your hand if you came here to be a mentor. Raise your hand. Okay. So mentoring is an act of service. Service is the greatest generator of happiness. And when we serve others, whether it's through mentoring or partnering, we look at what they're looking to accomplish, then we can use our best self to forward their goals and initiatives. And as our network grows, exponentially our power grows because they will remember that. And there will be times when you call on them and they remember that you helped them. I had this happen yesterday. I called a young man and I said, hey, guess what? You know, I'm the mentor and you're the mentee. Today we're flip-flopping. And he gave me an amazing idea because he works on Wall Street finance and I don't. So mentoring or putting your attention on someone else is to serve them and serve their needs first. That's why I believe that putting attention on others is more valuable than investing time in ourselves, but you're actually investing in your future self that you will become down the road. You're preparing for greatness in the future as compared to self-centered focus today.
Super interesting. Someone who's floating here in the middle, give it to me. Alcami.
It's not that I think investing in ourselves is better than putting attention to others. But like somebody said before, for me to help somebody, a lot of people want to help others and don't know how. Because they have nothing to give or they think they have nothing to give. And one has to invest on yourself for developing health, technique, skills, whatever it is that we're going to put attention on others. And if you can't do what you want to help others do, you can't do it your best, then, you know, that's why I just think it's more important. And I'm in the middle, just to be clear. But I do think that they go tied. They go together.
Right here.
I think it's a combination of both sides, because without investing on yourself with others' constructive criticism, you cannot progress as a human being and in your professional life. So I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah. Okay. Uh-huh.
I just wanted to say
I would
that.
never say no to you, Betsy. You know that, right?
Gracias, mi Dana. I just wanted to say you have to have a balance in life, and you have to invest in yourself and find your true mission in life to be able to help others. Once you find that balance in your life and you know why you came to this world, and you find your mission and you work to that mission, that vision in life, you can help others.
Okay, perfecto. Having heard what people have to say, does it make anyone in the room feel like maybe you want to move even just a little bit on your side? Who would move a little bit? Like, were you moving just because you're looking for the drinks, or were you just moving? Right? Right? So sometimes we are swayed. Sometimes someone's argument resonates with us. Okay, so is it better to be intelligent and knowledgeable, or curious and clever? Go. Curious and clever on that side, intelligent and knowledgeable on this side. Remember, you cannot stand directly in the middle, because I will call you out. Intelligent and knowledgeable, curious and clever. Wow. So there's like this migration going on, right? So let's go start with the minority over here. Who over here, give us the understanding of knowledgeable and intelligent being the key. Who over here? Someone speak to it for me. Vamos. Go for it. Microphone right here.
So I believe that before making any decisions, you have to have the knowledge and have the study about something a step that you might take. So I prefer educating myself, knowing what I'm talking about before making any step. What I think.
Grounded building blocks. Okay, perfect. Okay, there's a lot of you over here, right? Who's going to be the first to speak to it's better to be curious and clever? Who? Someone. Volunteers, right here, sir.
Thanks. So, building off that, sometimes you don't have time necessarily. You have to make decisions. You have to pivot quickly. Clever is a good way to work around when you don't always have all the knowledge. But when it comes to intelligence and knowledge, if you're not curious and clever, you get locked in your own box, and you don't hear what anyone else has to say, and you don't see over the horizon. So you can be intelligent and knowledgeable all day long, but if you're not curious, you're not listening, and you probably won't go anywhere with it.
Okay, perfect. Who's someone who's on the extreme of either side? Who? Over here, someone over here, right? Go for it, take it, right? Give us your heartfelt reason why these guys got it wrong.
So I think that our life is 76 years on average. We've been around floating in space in this rock for a couple thousands, billions of years. And I think that when we look at the history of who have come before us, we can start building patterns and deciphering cycles or data points that can tell us this is an opportunity, this is a way to improve, this is a way to actually enact change so it can be sustained. So I think that intelligence and having knowledge can help you identify those patterns so that you enter into something that is not a trend, it is something that can impact that life, that society for more than just your lifetime. That's my argument.
So that's kind of interesting because he's not describing knowledge and intelligence as a fixed thing. He's describing it as pattern finding, right? Make some people over here think. Some people are going, oh, fuck. You might know something, right? Shit. Anyone else over here want to give me the curiosity side of it? The curious and clever. Where? Por allá. But you'll have to speak loud, right?
So I would say that it's because I'm so curious that I always seek knowledge, and I go on YouTube University and go on Google. If there's something I don't actually know or understand, then I just feel like that is the reason I feel more knowledgeable. I just don't feel like, I feel I'm just so much more open-minded to something that's different than whatever thought before that. That's it.
Okay, perfect, right? I mean, in this world, things change so fast. What is the value of knowledge, right? Curiosity unlocks it. But there is so much unique knowledge created. Dominating it gives you an advantage, right? So either side has their points. Last one. Social media is mostly dividing us or connecting us. Social media is mostly dividing us or connecting us.
So this one usually has some serious polarity these days, right? So on the side of dividing us.
Who can speak to dividing us? Why is social media dividing us more than it's connecting us? Who speaks to this for us? Okay, you're kind of in the middle. You got to decide, though. You're like right on the center line. I'm looking at it right here. There we go.
So I actually think that even though the initial intention was to connect people, people already have certain prejudices and biases, and finding more people that think like them, they found a place to meet them through social media. So that's why I think it divides us.
Yeah.
But not completely, because there's opportunities to connect. It's how you use it.
So you think there's the potential to connect, that's why you're in the middle, right? But today it just seems to be like gearing towards dividing us. Okay, perfect.
And towards polarization.
Okay. So the people on the side of connecting us, right? Most of the media you hear today says social media is like dividing us. Why do you say social media connects us? Who speaks to that over here? Raise your hand, volunteer. I'll just like point you out, right? Okay.
I think we all have control over our actions. So if we have a platform and if we have a vision, we go for it. And that's the beauty of having social media accessible nowadays. So there's this platform like LinkedIn. You get to decide with whom you want to connect with, and they decide if to connect with you or not, and you decide to grow. So I think the division is also a decision from everybody. So I see things in this side because it's our decision. So yeah, that's what I think.
Choose to be connected. Okay, you were going to say divided. Tell me.
So that's it. Go ahead. Tell me.
Super important for us. What we're doing today is connectivity, right? If COVID taught us anything, the thing that we missed the most was interaction with people in the same room, contact, communication. And I think that is the big piece that is breaking down communities. I mean, there's large communities that, because of social media, you can sit back at home and not connect, right? You can connect in from your home on your couch, but you're not connecting in person. So I definitely think there's a way it's dividing us.
Okay. Last one you were going to say. Let's run a microphone over to you.
I was just briefly going to say that I'm the connecting part, obviously, because you have so many topics, people, and environments you can connect right now that you can even connect divisive people. You connect with people that are divisive across all spectrums, but they are connected through the social media. So even to be divisive, you have to be connected.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. So, find your seat again. You can sit down. You have done your homework. I'm going to finish. Okay, grab a seat. So, why creative tensions? Creative tensions is actually... It was something that was done at the Sundance Institute, the people who did the Sundance Film Festival, as a way to reimagine the way we hold conversations today in an incredibly polarized world, in an incredibly polarized United States. They said, we kind of talk over each other, and it's kind of like camps, but we need to have better conversations with each other, right? But I think about it this way. I think there's two things that kind of come out by having these kind of conversations. One is this idea that tensions is creative fuel. As entrepreneurs, as anyone really, but as entrepreneurs, it can get very easy to fall in love with your idea. Think there's only one way to do things, to think you're the only one who knows. But really, what makes great entrepreneurs and truly great creative people is this ability to hold two kind of opposing ideas in your head at one time. The ability to kind of say, I think this, but I could be wrong. It could be something else, right? And this is what really fuels creativity. Creativity is really about kind of pulling at tensions, holding two thoughts in your head that kind of compete with each other, and you let those ideas compete with themselves, right? Ray Dalio talks about this ability to kind of like keep this fluidity in your head and kind of analyze for yourself before you fall in love with an idea, right? So this ability to listen to other ideas within your own head is important. The other one is, as a designer, as a human-centric designer, a lot of what I do is try to understand why people are doing what they want and what they're trying to accomplish. And they say, in business today, one of the most powerful tools you have is empathy. And that sounds kind of like hippie-ish dumb shit, right? But empathy is this powerful tool. We sell nothing to no one if we don't first understand the experiences they want to have. How do they define value? What are the friction points they have? What is truly connective to them, right? And our ability to like listen to ideas and kind of hear other people, even if we don't completely agree with them, that's kind of a beginning part of empathy, right? Empathy is, unlike sympathy, empathy is being able to put yourself in the shoes of someone else. It's the ability to not just say, I feel for you or I respect your point of view, but it's saying, I will put aside all of my knowledge and all of my experiences, and I will try to see the problem or the issue or the experience or the situation from your point of view, even if I don't kind of agree with you, right? So, mira, el slide, right? So empathy is this powerful business tool. And more, go look at any company that's thriving in this world, and they apply design to their business. They stay fluid and adaptable and fast and smart and connected. And at the base of all of that is this ability to consider other ideas and empathize with people, whether they're your employees, your community, your customers. These are core and central. And it's why we decided to start with creative tensions. The other reason is to get you out of your seats because you're going to be sitting for a little while now. And we all know that the cocktail is like around 5:30 or 6. And with that, thank you very much for your time. I'll see many of you tomorrow.
Our first panel, it's called Nuances of Raising Capital. And I want to introduce Brian Bourgerie, who will be the moderator of this panel. With a decade of experience in launching funding platforms and initiatives, Brian has assisted hundreds of organizations and companies in their efforts to raise capital, in addition to leading efforts on innovation, investment, and entrepreneurship for Invest Puerto Rico. Brian is also the co-founder of Uncommon Entrepreneurs, the largest networking group in the Caribbean. Please help me welcome Brian Bourgerie.
All right, I'll use this one. Cool. Happy to be here. Excited for this panel. If you guys want to come up for the panel. So I'm excited to have this conversation. And as they're getting seated, I have a couple questions for the audience. How many of you have raised capital before? Raise your hand. How many of you have raised capital from the island or from a company on the island? Okay. How many of you are looking to raise capital either now or in the next 6 months? Okay, so we got a lot. Flip side, how many of you have invested into a company before, whether angel, through a fund? Okay, how many of you have invested in a company on the island before? Okay, good. So we'll have a little bit for everyone. So we're gonna introduce and get into our panel. I'm excited about this one. And we have some really good examples of nuances, experiences, things with raising capital here on the island. Because as most of you know, over the last maybe 5 years or so in time, there's been a big shift in entrepreneurship and capital raising and exposure and innovation, collaboration. One of the reasons I'm so excited about just Puerto Rico in general as an ecosystem. And this is what we're going to get into. So starting out, and I'll actually let them kind of introduce themselves a little bit more themselves, but we have Omar with Banco Popular and their new venture fund. If you didn't know they have one, now you do. We'll learn more about that. We have Jonathan Gonzalez as well with Raincoat, Henry Keenan with Red Atlas, and Demibán with Hyperion Bank. So instead of me just telling you about them, I want them to give 90 seconds on who you are and your company that you're working with. And let's start with Demibán.
Can you hear me? Yes, so I'm Demibán Díaz, co-founder and CEO of Hyperion, and we're building bridging banking and DeFi for small businesses. So we're creating a digital bank for any small business owner here in the island. We recently raised 1.2 million for us a pre-seed in our company, and we're currently just working with licensing to launch a product next year.
Awesome.
My name is Henry Keenan. I'm the founder and CEO of Red Atlas. Red Atlas is a real estate data, news, and insight company starting here in Puerto Rico, but for emerging markets in general. We've raised $1.2 million in the last 18 months since we started. And basically our goal is to provide transparency into the real estate market in Puerto Rico. So we collect information from all the government sources, 200 listing sites, Google, anywhere you can imagine where you get real estate information, we'll collect it and aggregate it.
Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan. I'm co-founder and CEO of Raincoat. At Raincoat, we develop embedded climate insurance products with the intention to help protect populations at scale from the disruption of climate events. We raised $4.5 million in the last 6 months, and are aimed at expanding basically our solutions not just in Puerto Rico, but across Latin America and the US.
Hi, my name is Omar Zinoveev. I come from the other side of the equation. I manage the recently created Popular Impact Fund. This is a venture capital fund created with capital for the corporation to invest in the startups, mostly in Puerto Rico.
Awesome. So we're going to dive into a few different angles here. But just to start out, first off, let's get a round of applause for these guys for raising capital for their companies. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all of your companies have gone through at least one on-island accelerator or program. Is that correct? Which ones have you guys participated in?
So we've been in Pre-18, D-Beta San Juan, that is from Generator. Tech Beach Retreat was on mostly in Caribbean companies. And we're recently in a small program that Endeavor is hosting in Puerto Rico.
We've been through Pre-18, Parallel 18 Gen X, Enterprise, and a Silicon Valley accelerator called Alchemist.
We've been through Parallel 18, Guayacan, and Rising Entrepreneurs.
Awesome.
I haven't been a known one, but we sponsor a lot of those programs.
There we go. Well, that's good too. I mean, we need support. So, and we have a handful of people support or from those organizations here. So I just want to, there we go, Parallel 18 right there in the house. Tomorrow, demo day, right? Talk to Monica if you have questions. So that's one thing that I've noticed and that I'm so excited about and that most people don't seem to realize is Puerto Rico has a really dense, I guess, grouping of early support organizations for startups of all sizes, and many people don't realize that, especially within the last 2 years. A bunch more have popped up. There's technically 40 accelerators, incubators, and entrepreneur programs on the island now of different types, and we're seeing products of some of that right now, successful capital raising, things like that. I want to dive in and kind of dissect your guys' experiences with raising capital, and don't be shy on nuances or on difficulties that you ran into in general, and if there were any specifically from raising capital from Puerto Rico, if that had any difference or not. So let's actually start with that, and we'll reverse in the answers. Did you run into any issues specifically because you're a company based in Puerto Rico versus if you're domiciled anywhere else?
I would say in our case for sure, mostly because 95% of the capital that we raised in our round was outside capital. So one of the questions was definitely the fact that we were based in Puerto Rico. And I think it depends on how you leverage that story. In our case, we leveraged the story, right? Because the startup was born, in fact, from what happened in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. So it was easy to weave that in. And I think that the biggest challenge wasn't so much that we were located in Puerto Rico, but to shift the focus away from expanding in Puerto Rico to expanding globally. So in a way, we actually had to minimize sort of our progress in Puerto Rico because I found out that as we were doing the pitches, if I would ever lead with Puerto Rico, it would lock their mentality into us being just a Puerto Rico specific startup as opposed to what we were trying to do. So getting our first client outside of Puerto Rico was a really critical milestone for us. And then once we had that, it was significantly easier to get that message across.
Awesome. That's interesting. So make sure you take note on that, is how you're presenting, and if you present in a way that makes it come off to investors that you have a small market or that the market is only the island, that could be a big turnoff. But good job on reversing that. What about you?
So I'm from the Bay Area, Silicon Valley originally. So when I started the company, I had this vision that I would just go to Sand Hill Road for a week and raise all this money, and that Puerto Rico would be a huge positive. And all the investors were really interested in Puerto Rico, but the problem was it was too interesting almost. Like there's too much risk involved. So basically we realized that if we're having to explain too much about real estate or too much about Puerto Rico, then we didn't have a good shot at closing that funding. So we basically created a set of rules where it's like, okay, if we're teaching someone about real estate, but they understand Puerto Rico really well, then that's a good investor for us. If we're teaching someone about Puerto Rico, but they know a lot about real estate, that's a really good investor for us. If they know both, even better. But what we learned is just, keep it, Puerto Rico is the cherry on top. Everything else has to work first, and keep it as, vanilla as possible.
Yeah, no, that's another good point. In anything, whether it's raising capital or even just business deals or even relationships, I mean, finding that common ground and building off of that. So when you're talking to investors and pitching them, make sure to do your research on what they understand, what they're familiar with, what they normally invest in, and then try to play to that, to where you're not spending half of your 30 minutes you have with them explaining just the island in general, but find those commonalities and try to get to your pitch as soon as possible. Demibán?
Yeah, in my case was similar, like Johnny mentioned. So because we're in the banking and fintech space, when you talk with U.S. investors, they're used to see a lot of fintechs there. So it was hard to explain why us are going to be a huge opportunity when you have Brex, Mercury. In our case, the community that we target is really micro business owners and mostly in underserved, underseen markets. So we leverage that as our key to launch in Puerto Rico because it is something that we have here and it's hard to start a business. And then the pandemic came. A lot of people wanted to capitalize on some idea they had and when they struggle in a key event. And so we say, like Puerto Rico, there's a lot of countries with the same problems on their scene. And our goal is to launch this product in Puerto Rico and then scale out of the island to other markets similar to us. And then that triggers and they see the opportunity, even though all the investors we got went from Puerto Rico, because it's not what an easy sale, but they really understand the problem. They see, oh, yeah, I know how hard it is to get a business going here, how hard it is to get your business account and then have payments, and we solve these three problems in one solution. And we see that now that we have that proven when we launch, then we can scale that outside of Puerto Rico.
That's great. That's good insight. Let's actually jump over to the other side of the equation, Omar. I know your fund's young, so you haven't talked to hundreds of companies yet, but you will, I'm sure. 100? Okay, you already have. Okay, so there's a lot. In those that you have spoken to, what have been some of the reasons, or what's been interesting that stuck out to you of, like, I guess something, I don't want to say negative, but I guess something negative or a reason why it was difficult for you or why you decided to pass on the deal? What are some of the things that you've come across as you've talked to companies?
Well, this type of venture is, as you might know, is very risky, particularly for a financial institution. So there are certain things that I think are non-negotiables. And for example, to be honest, I mean, most of the time nobody knows what really is going to happen with the company, right? You make your make your analysis, you prepare, you have different scenarios, and they're going to zero is definitely a high chance, right, that happens. So, but for us, I think that the non-negotiable part is that we need a strong team. We need a strong team, and we need people who we can trust. And if your investor cannot trust you, forget about it. I don't think that's ever going to get to a deal. So I think that, transparency, being honest, don't oversell. I mean, don't lie or say things bigger that you can achieve, because if you lose your investors' trust, I think it's very hard to get back. And on an addition, I think it's because we require some exit at some point, and usually higher valuations than other type of investments. It's very important, I think, to be able to expand outside Puerto Rico. I mean, I don't think we would not invest in a company that only operates in Puerto Rico, for the foreseeable future, but definitely having the opportunity to expand outside of the island, because we know this is a limited market, and that's, I guess, something that is required and hard to get for many companies. So
that's great insight. Actually, I have three things. Hopefully, I'll remember them all. One of them on the acquisition side, having an exit plan. I mean, most investors, I dare say all investors want to have a return out of their investment, or else they'd just be giving you free money. They want an exit plan. So it's interesting how many deals that I'll come across and I'll look at, and I feel like 90% don't even have any mention, maybe even thought of how they're going to exit or make the investor money. And sometimes that's something you can fall into as a founder of an early stage company, because you're just trying to grow something, stay alive, go to the next step. You're not thinking so far out. And it's not that you have to have it all figured out, but you need to take a step back from the investor point of view. They're investing because they want a return. So you need to at least show that there's some path to return. It's okay if you don't have it all figured out, which goes to another thought that Omar shared, is he talked about trust, and it may be natural early on when you're raising capital to think that you have to have all the answers for everything and be the smartest person in the room when you're with the investors. But I'd say most of the time that's a big turnoff, because any savvy investor knows you don't know everything. I don't know everything. No one knows everything. So if you act like it, then you're full of crap, quite frankly. And they can see through that. And it's actually better and builds more trust to know that you don't know what you don't know, or be clear that these are the things we know, these are the things we don't, but we've thought about it, and this is what we're going to do to find out or learn those things or bring you on as an investor because you're experiencing those things. So that's just another thought that came through. I don't remember the other one, but we'll probably get to it. So for your journeys of raising capital, for those who you ended up raising capital from, are they the same investors or demographic of investor that you initially targeted when you started raising capital? Or did you bring in different investors than you thought you would have had at the beginning? Let's start with Demibán.
To be honest, I didn't have a strategy initially. I'm a first-time founder. I come from enterprise kind of background, like pharmaceuticals, aerospace. So I was really, really new when I had the idea. I just like saw a big problem that I think needed to be solved. From there, I started talking to people. Like Jonathan was one of the first people that I get in contact, say, hey, I'm trying to do this. What do you think? So getting validation just informally helped me, then started connecting me with people that saw the opportunity like myself. I said, hey, Demibán, I think you should start raising capital. This problem is hard to solve, bootstrap. So I said, okay, I should start raising. So then I was just building my network from the bottoms up. But mostly was going, one person led me to the other. And then the programs help a lot because they scale, basically networking. But then as I started, I had 70, say, pitch meetings. A lot were from outside the US. But then when I started having intros directly to investors, those ones were really, I say, crucial. Those ones were really good. They had an idea what we were doing. They talked well about our team. Hector, that is my co-founder, is there. So that helped. They have somebody that they trust, and they tell them that, hey, I trust these two guys. They're doing good. They're hustling. And curiosity is what really got us here, because we're not bankers. We don't come for like a financial education. We mostly see a problem, and we just find ways to get that solution, and we leverage the people around us. That really is what the investors liked, because they want to see someone that if they throw you in the sea, it's dark, you got to swim. You don't know where you're going, but you want to find ways until you get to land. So that's how startup for me has been so far.
Before we move to you guys, so direct introductions, I don't know if anyone will contradict me on this, but it's hard to beat a direct introduction from a trusted person to their trusted person. I don't know how many deals I've come across, especially even in Silicon Valley, where you think some of these really big deals that happen, and you're like, oh my gosh, they probably had teams of lawyers and big meetings the whole time. Many times, or at least sometimes, it's one founder who's maybe knows this other founder, or one investor knows this other investor, says, hey, you need to invest in this right now. And I know big investors who have invested in something before even looking at any of the details because they trust that other investor. So finding those in your network, those who are respectable, trusted, and can make those introductions and are willing to, because that's the other thing. They normally won't make an introduction if they don't really like your project or don't think it's that good. So there's not really a replacement for that in capital raising. But let's continue. Did you attract the exact same investors you thought you would? You kind of hit on that. Maybe you didn't.
So I think of the people that ended up investing of my first, list of 50 or 30 or 50 that I had, I think only 10% ended up investing. And I think the reason for that is A, I wasn't experienced enough to pitch yet. But B, it's also, I started treating investors more like dating. So when you go to an investor, if you sound overeager or you sound, like you really need them, then obviously it's not going to work very well. And if you're too excited, so you need to know your stuff. You need to be calm. And then second of all, if you go to your family or people that you've known since you were, much younger, they'll still view you as that much younger person. So definitely go to people that are professional connections, number one. And then my mom didn't come in until her third round. So go to your professional connections first, yeah.
That's actually an interesting one. It's almost like a catch-22 or a lose-lose. When you have close people who know you as a kid or your parents or family, one, if it's really risky, maybe you don't want to bring them in just in case you don't succeed. But if you do succeed and you didn't bring them in, they're going to be like, well, what the heck? Why didn't you let me get in early? I'm your mom or whatever. So I don't know if you can win with that, but just do your best. Jonathan?
Yeah, no, in our case, it was very different. I would say in retrospect, it makes sense why the investors that invested were the ones. But I would say that obviously when we started fundraising, most of our investors, it was the first time that I was meeting them. So it wasn't like people who had followed the track of Raincoat or anything like that. I obviously didn't expect SoftBank or Anthemis or kind of like these insurtech heavy funds to invest in us. It was kind of a nice surprise in that sense. But I would say definitely one of the difficult or trickiest challenges is, as a founder, when you get the advice of like, oh, look into your network. I remember as a founder, you would sit back, hear that question and say, well, shit, my network doesn't have access to SoftBank, right? Doesn't have access to like, so how exactly do you dip in your network? And I think what was really effective for me was I started building relationships with other founders. So out of all the VCs that came into the round, almost, I would say, I think all of them came in through another founder that I had met through cold email, through Twitter, through a different environment, who I had built a relationship with related to the fundraise. Something as simple as, hey, we're in a similar space. I'd love some feedback on my startup. You've got an investment from VCs that I respect. I would love your feedback. And oftentimes founders help founders and they tend to understand what that's like. And it was actually those founders who did introductions. I think the only notable one that was within the network, and it kind of goes to show how the network in Puerto Rico has grown, was SoftBank. That was through Orlando Bravo's program, Rising Entrepreneurs. The rest were really through founder-led kind of introductions.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's a great insight. So moving back over to the other side of the table, for companies that well, first off, what's the process when a company wants to pitch you? Are you finding them? Are they coming to you? Is it both? And then do you have a process where you review the deck first and then you talk to them? Or when you're meeting with them, is it your first time meeting them or hearing about the project? Just tell us more about that.
So at the beginning, we started the fund last year and we were working for a long time without being public. So usually the first meetings were with people, through networks. After we went public, and we are there. So now we get more, people sending the pitches to us or the ideas or whatever. So I think the best way to do it, yes, you send, obviously it's going to be better if you know the person through someone. When that's not possible, then you find a way to reach out the investor, the potential investor, and yes, send them a pitch of what you're looking for, and what are your ideas, what's your plan, what's your company, to help them understand whether the company is a fit for their investment strategy. So that's basically then if we like the pitch, we meet the company, and then we start the diligence process and try to build a deal from there. The only thing I want to say is for the ones raising capital out there is that do not take the first dollar that they give it to you. I mean, you do your due diligence on your investor, because sometimes it happens that when you see the cap table and you see some names there, that maybe you don't wanna mess with, you can scare off other investors in the future. So I mean, if you need the capital, of course, raise it, how you can, but be conscious and do your due diligence on the person that investing money on you, because that's gonna help. That's gonna help your future rounds or hurt your future rounds.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. I mean, again, there's a lot of relationships and connections in capital raising many times, although we'll get into some ways where that's less the case. However, it's not just the company doing due diligence or the investors doing due diligence on your company and the founders. It should be the other way around as well. Know who the investors are. Learn as much as you can about them. Know if, well, one, are they successful in their investments or not? Two, do they have any shady stuff going on? Or are they maybe in certain crowds or industry or things like that could hurt you in the long run? If you can find others, this is where maybe founders and other stuff, like find other founders or portfolio companies, talk to them. How is it having them as an investor or on your board or anything like that? Because you might find out like, oh, they micromanage, they try to tell me to do everything, and I don't like that. Or maybe you want that. So you just got to find what's a good fit for you, because it is a relationship. You're not necessarily getting married, but you're kind of getting married, at least financially, for a while. And that can go really good, or it might not go that great. So you want to go both ways, and don't just take the first money that comes in. Which leads me, have you raised other types of capital besides equity capital, or did you explore other types of capital raising before you settled on I guess, more of a traditional route of just raising equity. Demibán, do you want to start?
In my case, like, because we're pre-product, pre-launch, it was going to be hard to get a loan. Like, that's not what you get for a startup. So for me, I went straight to equity. Like, but we use a KISS instrument for our round. That helped us. One thing was that we noticed SAFE, which is like a popular one, YC here in Puerto Rico, was not quite well received, that kind of instrument, because like they used it in the past, and maybe then founders do not raise again, and then they don't have a certainty about raising. So we had to find a way that, hey, we care about, we know you want to make money, and we also want to grow this. So the keys help us like get the instrument that we didn't get like interest rate, like a convertible note, but they got the conditions that were affordable to the investors. So that really like helped us getting that round closed.
Yeah, I actually remember when we were working together on some stuff and you're getting ready, and just in general, many times how you think you want to structure the deal is not what the investors want, or depending who you're trying to raise capital from, the deal structure may be entirely different. An example, if you're raising capital from angel investors, individuals, maybe doing a bunch of smaller checks, that might be a totally different structure than if you're looking for one VC or private equity firm to just come in and swoop the whole thing or take a big chunk. There's going to be different demands, there's going to be different requirements, and depending how you structure that deal can greatly affect the type of investor that you're going to attract. So you need to think about that. And one of the things that you can do now, about 2 years now, when they harmonize the exemptions for raising capital, you can broadly do what's called test the waters campaigns. So before you've even decided what exemption you're going to raise capital from, or the deal terms, or anything like that, maybe you just know you want to raise $1 million, or you think you need to raise $1 million. You can do a test the waters campaign, put out basic information on the company and what you're looking to do, and then have people just give indications of interest. So they're not giving you money yet, they're not committing to anything, but they are giving you feedback and interest. And you guys actually had that set up on the Impeller platform as well. You can check and gauge interest, because you might find no one likes my deal, or everyone says the terms that I'm thinking are crap, or whatever. You're getting feedback. So before you spend the money and time on legal and everything else, you can be testing the waters. That's not always the best, but sometimes that is a very good thing to do, just so you understand how to structure, if you should even go forward with it. You never know what comes out in those processes. So just something to think about. And I guess a shameless plug, we do have the Impeller investment platform that we launched for Invest Puerto Rico that's open to anyone raising capital on the island, and that's built into it. But anyways, moving on, any thoughts on the previous question?
Yeah, so we looked at doing a SAFE first as well, which is a form of debt, essentially. And when you bring that to Puerto Rico, there's a lot of things that Californians like to try that don't necessarily translate well to the rest of the world. And I think, this kind of like weird kind of debt mechanism doesn't really translate well to a place where it's like, okay, I want to own a certain amount of the company, I'm putting in this amount now, like give me some equity. So we ended up doing just all equity rounds the whole way through, and that played much better in Puerto Rico.
I've done all of them, I think, and I did SAFEs in Puerto Rico, and I've done price rounds here.
And correct me if I'm wrong, were all your investors, at least initially, well, you've raised a couple different times, so are your investors mainly institutional? Do you have angel investors, and when did they come in?
So we have a little bit of everything. Our first investors were angel investors via SAFE. Specifically, one of them actually lives here in the Ritz. Really nice guy, John Fitzpatrick. He was, I'd say, the first angel investment. He came with Moral Ventures, which is more institutional VC. And then we had 2 more angels, basically, that came in after that. And then our priced round, which is the recent one. And then the priced round that we had now, it's mostly institutional and corporate VCs, like in the case of Banco Popular. And that's basically, it's purely institutional and corporate VC.
Do you have a mix as well of angels and institutions, or what's your cap table look like?
Mostly angels. I think our average check size is like 25 grand, but the largest check was like 200. So we have 3 institutions and the rest.
In my case, I have like mix. So I have a private equity firm, which is Alvin Morro. Then I have Morro Ventures, independent capital, more VC, early stage, and then we have a couple angel investors too.
Yeah, so that's something, there's a mix. There's not just one type of investor like I was hitting on before, and there's also other mechanisms. I come a lot from the equity and investment crowdfunding space. When that became legal in the US in 2012-13, when the Jobs Act passed, you could raise capital, and more broadly, you could market it online. Then when regulation crowdfunding, Reg CF came into play, that allowed you to be really active raising from non-accredited investors. So our last tech company we sold a few years ago, we actually turned all the VCs down because we wanted to have a company for and by the people. That was kind of our thing, part of our whole ethos and marketing. And our minimum investment size was $100. So that was less than our product cost. So you could invest and get 20 shares for less than our product cost. And for us, that worked really well. And we were able to oversubscribe multiple rounds. So there's different types of funding, and one of them just isn't bad or anything like that, but it's important to break away from the thoughts of there's debt funding, like from a bank traditionally, and there's Shark Tank style VC. There's so much more than that. And each type of funding, whether it's crowdfunding, going from VCs or private equity firms or angels or whatever that might be, are only going to be a good fit for a fraction or a portion of the startups trying to raise capital. So there are lots of different ways, and you're hearing they're talking about safes, they're talking about traditional equity, even within debt. There's so many different kinds of debt. So you really need to look into what are the options available and what's actually the best for your company. For us, it was better to have a company formed by the people in that sense, and to have crowdfunding and to have a lot of people. For others, that might be the worst thing you could do. So you really need to take a step back, look at that, and think, what types of investors do we need? And beyond just capital, how can they help? Maybe they're helping because you have 1,000 of them and they're all evangelists and customers and your social media army. Or maybe you need some big, very strategic investors or SoftBank or some of those because you're in a more highly regulated industry or healthcare or something like that where you'll need millions and maybe billions depending what you're doing. So those are things you should think about as you're getting ready to raise capital. So thanks for those insights, guys. Let's go to, what do you wish you knew? What do you know now that you wish you knew when you started, and how would that have helped you? Let's start with Henry, and then Jonathan, and then Demibán.
Tough one. Basically everything. The biggest one was, had I known what I know now, I wouldn't have started it. Because there's been multiple times where we had single-digit weeks of cash left in the bank. Actually, when I started, we had zero cash in the bank, and I had one check that came in. I was able to pay my contractors here in Puerto Rico and in Argentina, like the day I needed the cash. So knowing what I know now, I probably wouldn't have started it. But that was, I guess, one of the good things. And then knowing what I know now, I probably would have pre-raised some money before quitting the job.
Fair enough. All right, Jonathan?
For me, it's two things. One is, it depends a little bit on the founder personality, but so I tend to have a very founder-focused mentality, and I have a lot of empathy towards founders. So I know that to me, it was really two core ideas. One was the general stress of raising capital when you haven't really raised that amount or that type is really unnecessary, because once you're past that point, you realize that raising capital is just a tool, like any tool, not a milestone per se. But because of the way that the media and everything is structured around raising capital, it feels very much like a step function milestone, but in reality, it's just a tool. And the more you interact with it, the more you realize that it's not as scary as it would initially seem, nor is it as complex as you'd expect if you take sessions and you listen to others around it. So it'd be my first thing is to relax, calm down a little bit, talk with other founders, get a plan in place, but don't stress too much about it. That'd be my first one. And then the second one is that a lot of success when it comes to fundraising is really process-driven. So most of the people, like even our case where we got rejected so many times when we were raising capital, the reality is that it's process-driven as opposed to like fit-driven, right? So if you have a good process in place, and if you don't, you can talk to other founders to establish a process. fundraising becomes significantly easier if you know what that process is like, if you know that it's a numbers game, right? So if I talk to 70 investors and 10 of them move on and then 5 of those move on, then you can run it like a process and it eliminates a lot of the emotions attached to it. And I guess the third point, which is probably the biggest learning lesson for me, is the warm intro is ridiculously powerful. I would say that if there's anything you can do to significantly increase your odds of successfully raising capital as a founder, it really is just being friends with other founders. Like fundamentally, building relationships with other people that can potentially do an intro someday, I think is probably the biggest growth hack you could possibly do to raise capital. And I can attest to that because in our case, I tried everything, cold, events, warm, and the ones that converted were all introed by friends.
Great insights.
That's what happened to me. Like all my investors came through introduction. Like those one helped me. Also, one thing is that that I wish I learned. Like I was completely new to the startup ecosystem when I started. First, like go to other founders as quick as possible. And somebody gave me that advice. I just started going to LinkedIn and every other on MySpace, which is fintech. I started like talking to a lot of fintech CEOs. How was their process? And that helped me get the mindset. Like Johnny mentioned, it's a mindset that you need to get. Like raising capital is not something you thought in school. It was something that I didn't know. It's like sometimes like playing chess because you need to be prepared. You need to think step ahead. You need to, sometimes you have to think a lot, but because you have a lot, somebody puts you an offer, is it good an offer, and then puts you pressure that you may have to take the offer right now. But then at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. Like you can say no until you have your good investors in place. So getting that investor management relationship, I wish I knew earlier how to get what to get from the initial meeting. When I got to the first investor meeting, I think that I was going to get a check out of that meeting. Like that's really naive of myself. But now I know that you get one meeting just to gauge interest. Well, if they think this works, if they think it's a good idea, you want them to strip down your product. If they're not doing that, then it's not that interesting. They want to see how you're thinking about all the so that's something that I learned. Like you go to investors, see what they get. If you see, wow, he really has a lot of good insights that I didn't have. Maybe this is a good investor for me. Hey, will you give me another meeting? And then it's a relationship that you had to build. It's not somebody that's going to give you money out of the pocket. So that's something that I had to learn. Good thing that I'm really a social guy, so I got to that quickly. It helped me a lot. And I'll say another thing, build something simpler. I think Hector and I were really ambitious with our product, and that a lot of investor meetings were a lot friction because hey, you're trying to do a lot and you're just two guys and you're not a fintech space. So just simplifying the product, be slimmer, like build a rocket, build me not a rocket, that kind of mindset. I wish we learned it like early on. You think you're going to simplify, but when you talk to somebody, you realize, no, you're trying to do a lot of things. So I would say those two things, manage the investors and go straight to something simpler when you're starting from scratch.
That's great insight. One of the things that came to mind is ask for a referral. Even if they say no, I mean, most times it's not a good fit, or maybe you didn't present well, whatever it is, but it's not anything personal. Rarely. I mean, if you're a jerk to them, maybe. But barring that, it's not personal if they say no. And if you're doing a good job, whatever, ask for feedback. Many investors are happy to give you feedback and reasons maybe why they said no, but also ask for referrals or if there's anyone else that they know who might be a good fit. And you'll be surprised, many of them might. They might know someone who could be a mentor for you, an investor for you, or another company that's maybe doing the exact same thing and that's why they said no. But you need to ask. Sometimes they'll offer that, but many times the ball's in your court. So you need to speak up and ask those questions. Flipping scenarios then, what are some things that you want to tell anyone who's looking to raise capital or maybe who's going to come speak to you in the future? What are some pieces of advice that the founder should have in mind when they're going to pitch a firm like yours to be successful?
Well, the first thing I wanted to, I think, add a little bit on what you said earlier. just a few minutes before. Sometimes they know, it's not because they don't like you or they like a company. There are many things behind I know, right? There's no timing, the stage of the company. I don't have funds. I have, too many companies that are similar to this one. So there are many things behind I know that should not discourage you, right? To keep going around like these guys did. Some pointers to people raising capital. I think that these guys summarize most of the things, right? Just have something that people can understand, right? Where you are, where you want to go, how much money you need, how you're going to spend it. Make sure that you not only talk about all the good things, point all the risks and how you want to manage that. And again, try to build this trust that we talked earlier with your potential investor, right? Because if you're showing them that you're gonna make $100 million in 5 years, and it's not true. I mean, how can you be serious about evaluating a company that has some numbers in a paper that don't make any sense? So be honest. And try to be as simple as possible. Don't complicate things. Sometimes you're looking many companies at the same time, and if you see something that's too complex, you're not gonna focus on that. So that's
great. Switching gears now. So we've talked about what you wish you would have known. What's one, maybe two things that helped you that you didn't realize would help you in this process, or maybe you did realize, but what are a couple things you did that you think really helped you in the capital raising process? Let's start with Henry, then Demibán, Jonathan.
So I had I'd started a nonprofit in college, and that was like my first kind of company. First death of a child when my board members did a deal with Julia Kelleher behind my back, and then I found out about it, and they got a 6-figure consulting fee, and I had to leave the company or the nonprofit, thankfully, before it all blew up. But The thing that I didn't have in that I really realized that I needed was industry-specific experience. Going to that, I'd been a college student, lots of energy, lots of ambition, but didn't actually know the things that I was talking about. Whereas then if you go work in your industry for at least 2-3 years, go learn what you're actually trying to build, and rather than just trying to change the world, having a fundamental understanding of how certain industries work, that was something that really, really helped me the second time around. Yep.
That's great. Yeah, domain expertise. I mean, maybe you're not the expert in everything, and disagree with me if you think differently, but if you're an investor and you know that the team knows what they're talking about, I mean, that can be the majority of the battle right there. Just knowing that they're actually skilled in what they're doing. That can go a long way. All right, Demibán.
So something that and this is just life, like I spent my first 5 years working in highly regulated industry, safety critical software. So that gave me a lot of edge. And also Hector has some similar background like me when we came to banking. Like we know we're not bankers, but we were used to making software that were life threatening. So we know how to deal with software that have to comply. Right now we're managing people's money. Before I was managing people's lives. So I know the stress that helped me, and also because we were really technical, we can get into the weeds. That helped us a lot in some of the meetings when we got people that were really expert on the field. I would say also like both Hector and I are really curious. In my case, I learned software just by myself after work. So that helped me understand what I needed to know about fintech so we can build a product. And Hector is the same thing. He learned about programming himself. So when that also helped us when we got into meetings, there was something that we didn't know about the space. We had that model about how we can learn something new. So we leverage people around us. Then we can then get into technical and quickly understand. So that helped us a lot. And also in my case, I like to talk. So when you need to get investors, like you need to talk a lot of people, and get out there and go to events. Sometimes it's draining if you're not like that. You have to get used to it. If you don't have it, train yourself. Like, how can I get myself out there? I need to talk. People need to know about what we're building. Good for me that the opposite. If I'm alone, I get drained, so I like to be out there. So that helped me a lot, at least in my case.
Great, thank you. Jonathan?
Yeah, something that was interesting to me and helpful is understanding what capital is from an allocator perspective. So really understanding how is it to be an investor? Like what is it like? How are venture capital firms structured? Where do they get their capital? What are the expectations they have? Once you understand kind of the framework of how capital moves, a lot of these things start to make a lot more sense within that context, right? So for me, having empathy towards what it is to be an investor across the different layers of the stack, angel, VC, private equity, and kind of one of the challenges of having that job allows you to remove a lot of the emotional aspect from an initial meeting when you realize you also, the person on the other side has a challenge as well. And it's your job in a way to make that challenge as easy as possible so that transaction can go through. So having a good understanding of how that's structured to me was really helpful.
Yeah, that's important. It's like putting a puzzle together. I mean, at the end of the day, both the investors and the companies want to make something happen. You may just not be the right fit. You might not be the right puzzle piece to plug in, but you're both going for the same goal. So the better you understand what their puzzle piece looks like and what yours is, a lot easier it's going to be and less emotional. Which goes into, we just have a few seconds left, always be raising. So maybe not always be pitching and hounding, but always have the mindset because you never know what's going to happen or when you're going to need to raise next. And when you do, you don't want it to be like, oh crap, I'm running out of money next month. I got to start raising capital. Like you want to be ready all the time. You want to have those relationships always growing and connecting. So that also helps keep it more even keel so it's not such a thrash or emotional or a full-time job, because raising capital can be a full-time job, especially when you're down to the wire and you just have to do it. And sometimes that's the nature of life and business, but if you're always doing that, if you're coming to these events and conferences and things like that and making these connections, all that's adding to maybe a future capital raise. Maybe it's 2 companies down the line, but the connections you may make today may be the ones you need in 5 years, 6 years from now, and that could be all the difference. So just make the most out of all your time. Thank you. Let's give another round of applause for our panelists. All right. Thanks, everyone.